Alright, this video is a request for those who are late, who missed it. I move my videos and I move my uploads to my Rumble channel. The link to my Rumble page is in the description. If people want any uploads on this channel, it have to come through donations. You can donate to the channel and just put a message of the video request, the video topic, a question you want answered. It's all in the description of this video. This video is from a request, and this person wanted me to talk about Eddie Guerrero being overrated. Now, this person, I don't know what video it was, but I have stated on this channel how I always thought Eddie Guerrero was overrated. So this person wanted me to explain why. I'm pretty sure in whatever video I said that on, I said why, but whatever. Shout out to those who support the channel. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Now, Eddie Guerrero, he's someone who, when I was a kid, my first memory of seeing wrestling was actually WCW in 1996. My first memory of seeing wrestling was it was one of the weekend shows. I think it might have been I don't think it was WCW Saturday Night. I think it was one of the morning shows, because that's, in the 90s they still did like morning wrestling, but I can't remember. Was it called, it was WCW, but was it called Main Event? I think it might have been Main Event, but it was some morning show, and when we turned it on, the first image I ever saw of wrestling that I can remember is NWO beating up, beating down, jumping, assaulting Harlem Heat. So I literally grew up in that Monday Night Wars era, and one of the people there was Eddie Guerrero. Now, I will say this. In recent history, and by recent, maybe the last 2 or 3 years, I have learned to appreciate Eddie Guerrero more. But my statements that I said are still correct. He was overrated for most of his career. And what I mean is, for most of Eddie Guerrero's career, he lacked charisma. He lacked mic skills. He lacked presence. Wrestling is not about moves. It's not about moves. Wrestling is about having a character, charisma, magnetism, drawing. It's about being an uncommon person who sticks out. Eddie Guerrero lacked that, and he did not really start getting that until he came to the WWF, and then he really did not reach that level where he had that character and that charisma and that talking ability until probably maybe late 2003 into 04. That's the reason he got his push in 2004. When Brock Lesnar said he was going to leave wrestling he let that be known in late 03, and they knew he was going to leave by January of 04. Part of it was, okay, we have to put the belt on someone else. But also at that same time, Eddie Guerrero had finally developed the last key to the game of wrestling. He always could, be a technical wrestler, a high flyer, all that type of thing. But he always lacked character. He always lacked mic skills. So that's what I meant. He didn't have those things in 95 ECW. He didn't have those things in Mexico before ECW. He didn't have those things in 96, 97, 98. In 1998, I was actually just watching this. I was watching a Nitro from, I believe, 98, and it was a segment where Eddie Guerrero came to the ring with his suitcase, and he was like, I think it was like the first time he really got to really talk like that. And he was in the ring and he was like talking about Eric Bischoff, but like he was like kind of stumbling over his words. You could see he had no confidence on the microphone. So he didn't have what I'm saying. He didn't have it then. He was always a mid-card wrestler for a reason. I'm thinking about a lot of these wrestling marks, because there is a difference between a mark and a fan. A fan has composure. A fan has perspective. A mark has this obsession and bias. A lot of these marks, They have this thing of, well, WCW held back Eddie Guerrero, or they held this person back. No, they didn't hold them back. Eddie Guerrero lacked the tools at that time. Because when he went to WWF, and that's another lie, and that should actually be my next episode of Wrestling Lies. The lie that the Radicals going to WWF, that was the final straw that killed WCW. No, it wasn't. Somehow the Radicals going to WWF was better for them. How? They were mid-carders. They didn't put Benoit in the main event until '04. Did he have some main events? Yeah, he main evented, I believe, Fully Loaded with The Rock. I think he was in one of the Fatal 4-Ways, I think Unforgiven 2000. But it was more of, the carousel of heels to face The Rock. It wasn't they're really elevating Benoit like that. And Benoit's another one. He had even less mic skills and charisma than Eddie Guerrero. So that's another lie. But if someone wants to donate for that one, go ahead. Wrestling Lies, this idea of the Radicals was like the final nail for WCW, which is nonsense. People have this idea like the two things that killed WCW was the finger poke of doom, which I already exposed. Look on this channel, Wrestling Lies. The finger poke of doom killed WCW. That's a lie. And then the other one is the Radicals leaving was the final straw. No, it wasn't. It was not. And I also have a video on this channel of the real reason WCW died. I believe I have that video on this channel. Or maybe that was the real reason TNA died. Whatever the case. Check out my back catalog. Now, hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to this channel. When Eddie Guerrero went to WWF, he was in the same position he was in WCW. He was a mid-carder. He did show more personality when he went with China, because when he went to the WWF in 2000, that's when, at least WWF allowed him to develop a character, Latino heat, and he used to talk with like the stereotypical accent, but he did interviews saying, his character was based on like people he grew up around in Texas, and, the way certain people were in California and things like that. And also the Latino heat, and, that was a tribute to Art Barr, the late Art Barr, the whole Latin love machine, that was a tribute to him. So he did develop more of a character. But even in the China thing, he still didn't have great mic skills and great charisma. He had more of a character. It was amusing. I always liked the Eddie Guerrero China storyline. To me, they ended it kind of too soon. But, that was like a good pairing because they were like an odd pair. But Eddie Guerrero was still a mid-card at that point. He developed his character, like I said, in late '03 into '04. And when they got to '04, they put a belt on, they put the world title on him, the SmackDown world title. But even though at that time he had developed a character, he was the best at talking he ever was, he could still do whatever he did in the ring. But still, I'm even right at that point, because when they made him a main eventer, he was not a draw. They took the belt off of him for a reason, and they put it on Bradshaw. For anything, that should tell you how much of a draw he wasn't. They took the belt off of him in like 3 months and gave it to Bradshaw. And Bradshaw was even worse of a draw. And they didn't put it back on Eddie Guerrero. So, Eddie Guerrero is overrated to me. He's overrated to me because he lacked a lot of the tools, and then when he was put in position, he did not fit the main event position. These are facts. It's not opinions. You could look up house show attendance. You could look up buy rates when he was the champion. It did not draw. Wrestling is about drawing. It's not about, well, you like this person. It don't matter who you like. Wrestling is a business. When you get to, and then obviously, 2005, he's slotted in the upper mid card, but he always fit there. Now, do I think they should have took the belt off of him as soon as they did? No. Do I think they should have put the belt on JBL? No. But they did it for a reason. I think they did it too soon, but they did it for a reason. Now, beyond everything I stated, the actual number one reason why I say he's overrated is because, once again, I grew up in that Nitro era. I grew up in the Attitude era. I grew up in that 2002, 2005 era, which was his biggest push. When Eddie Guerrero was alive, I never heard anybody call him a legend. In 1997, no one was calling him a legend. In 2000, No one called him a legend. In 2005, no one was calling him a legend. But the day he passed away, the next day, oh my God, Eddie Guerrero's a legend. He's one of the greatest of all time. I'm sorry, you weren't saying that the day before he died. And that's another thing that annoys me with people. Because someone dies, that doesn't mean they're all of a sudden greater. Why weren't you saying that when they were living? You don't become a legend because you're deceased. You just become deceased. You know, I seen people say Eddie Guerrero, he was like the Hispanic Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was a million years ahead of him. That is ridiculous. Now, the suddenness of people labeling him a legend, that's ridiculous. I don't do that. You know, when an athlete retires or passes away, you know, I like to let time pass, let history pass. And that's why I said in recent times, I've come to appreciate him more. So at this time, I will say Eddie Guerrero is a legend. But he was not a legend in 98. He was not a legend in 2000. He's not a legend in 2005. Let time pass. Now, I'll say he was a legend, but I still think he's overrated and overhyped by a lot of these Dave Meltzer observer marks. He is. But he is a legend. Same way Benoit's a legend. You know, Dean Malenko's a legend. To me, I always like Dean Malenko more than Benoit and Guerrero. But that's another video for another day. You know, Malenko, obviously he didn't have the charisma or mic skills, but Malenko, I don't know, he just always appealed to me more than them. I always liked him better in WCW. And when they got to WWF in 2000, I always wish Malenko got the better push, a bigger push. They gave him like a funny character when he was like James Bond, but then he was like a sexual deviant and he was trying to get at Lita. That was funny, and then he retired shortly. But also you have to remember Dean Malenko was much older, I believe, at that time, so they probably never really had long-term plans for him. He did become an agent. But yeah, so that's my explanation. That's my views on Eddie Guerrero. He's a legend. Rest his soul. He believed in the Most High. So he's a good man in my book. And with that said, I'm up out of here. Like, share, comment, subscribe.